It's Final Friday.
TJ, let's move on to your next follow. I asked you for someone you don't know but want to be friends with, and you said Dan Savage, who is on Instagram and Facebook at Dan Savage, and on Twitter at Fake Dan Savage. Dan is a writer and LGBT rights advocate, and he first got famous for writing a newspaper column called Savage Love, which I think started in The Stranger, which is like an alternative newspaper in Seattle. But you told me in your email that you are especially into this companion podcast to Savage Love, right?
Yeah, absolutely. The Savage Lovecast is one of the longest running podcasts I think there is. It started back when podcasts were still uploaded to iPods. And I've been a fan of, I think I started listening to Dan almost 10 years ago. I've been really into podcasting for a very long time. I mean, how I got into audio journalism was I was 20 years old and my friend had an iPod and was like, there's this thing called This American Life. Do you want to listen? And that was 15 years ago now almost. Mm-hmm. So yeah, like I started listening to Dan really early on. He does great relationship, sex, love advice in the Savage Lovecast. It's a call-in based show, so people call in with their questions and ask him for advice. And, you know, some of the questions that he gets are just bizarre. They're funny. They're sad. Some of them are shocking. And I just find it entertaining and really fascinating. And as somebody who also is really interested in, you know, questions around sexuality, around gender, around feminism, the advice he gives kind of touches all of that and sort of how we think about, you know, people and relationships as we move through the world. So I've been a big fan of the podcast. And then he also does a lot of political commentary, both at the top of the show and on Twitter as well. He's still at The Stranger. I believe he's like the editorial director of it now. All weekly magazines and publications are a dying breed, unfortunately. And he's sort of, you know, The Stranger is still going strong. I've never even been to Seattle, but like I've donated to The Stranger just because I love his podcast.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, he's just really funny. I also listen to lots of political podcasts. So I like Dan's political commentary online that he does through Twitter. And as somebody, you know, I'm hosting a podcast about sperm and egg donors. I have a definite interest in sort of reproductive medicine and history. And he kind of tweets a lot about that kind of thing, given his focus in his show. So yeah, that's one of the reasons I love following him. And he makes me laugh too. So he kind of doesn't take himself too seriously.
Well, yeah, speaking of both political commentary and making us laugh, I was looking at Dan's Wikipedia page, which reminded me that he was responsible for this iconic moment in sort of online political activism, you might say. You may know where I'm going with this. Yeah. He and his fans of Savage Love decided to basically redefine the word Santorum, which was the last name of this homophobic Republican senator who had said some not acceptable, nasty stuff about gay people. And this is a vaguely family-friendly podcast. I will not get too specific, but for the adults listening, it's a brilliant bit of internet activism. I strongly encourage you, if you are, you know, an adult, to go read up about what they rebranded Santorum to mean.
Yeah. I mean, it's a gross definition for sure. But yeah, it's really, really funny that, you know, he was able to do that when Rick Santorum was sort of crusading against the LGBTQ community in the United States. And this was, you know, way before gay marriage had even become law in the United States.
Right.
And Dan, interestingly enough, I think he's invented a couple other words that we now sort of use as part of dating culture. I think he invented the word monogamish, and like I know like some people like that are in like quasi open relationships, like they use that term to describe themselves. And like I learned that from listening to his show the other day. He's like, yeah, we invented this term like 8 years ago. And I was like, oh wow, I didn't even know that. So he's actually had some influence on sort of the broader culture that I don't even think some of us probably even realize.
Exactly.
So yeah, he seems like a cool person that I would like to hang out with and like pick his brain all day long. So that's why he's definitely on my list. You
know, that was going to be my next question, which is, you know, hypothetically, let's say Dan calls you up and says, TJ, I just heard you on my favorite podcast, Follow Friday. You seem cool. Let's be friends. Like, what specifically do you want to go somewhere with him? Do you want to just like get coffee and talk about something? What's on your mind?
Yeah, I mean, I would just want to get dinner and talk to him, probably about politics, probably about reproductive health care. He's a huge champion for access to safe legal abortion. So, I've spent a lot of the last few years looking into reproductive health care for the podcast. And then, in addition to that, when I was at WNYC and I was a producer, I was, making sure that we were doing series on reproductive health care on, I was helped book the head of the UN Women's organization to come talk on our show on International Women's Day. So I would just talk to him about a bunch of reproductive health issues and politics, and probably just have a great dinner, share a bottle of wine, and catch up as friends if he would be my friend.
Yeah. Well, and in your email to me, you also specifically mentioned his tweets. Is there something specific about the way that he uses Twitter that really clicks with you?
Yeah, I mean, he has a little bit of a trolly sense to him, not where he's actually trolling people, but he kind of has a wink and a nod to him in what he will tweet. So here's one tweet that he sent the other day that I find funny, and it's politically related. I don't know the political makeup of your audience, but it was in regards to the Senate hearings for Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson, and Dan tweets, "Did Cory Booker fail Ketanji Brown Jackson by not slapping the shit out of Ted Cruz?" And then he replies, "Or did he fail us all?" And so he's just sort of a little bit tongue-in-cheek. I find him funny, but also insightful when he tries to actually be serious. So that's one of the reasons I really enjoy his tweets. I'm a bit of a news junkie myself, being a journalist. And so I'm constantly on Twitter looking at the political commentary from all various aspects and following the news in Washington and in New York, where I live, very closely. And it's nice to kind of be able to break and have a chuckle when the news is so grim all the time. Yep. So that's one of the reasons I also like to follow him on Twitter specifically.
Well, that was Dan Savage, who is on Instagram and Facebook at Dan Savage and on Twitter at Fake Dan Savage.